He who passively accepts evil is as much involved in it as he who helps to perpetrate it. He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it. And that was said by Martin Luther King Jr. Welcome to Surviving the Matrix, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maxwell Egan. It's a pleasure to be with you once again, and I will be your host for the next hour. Well, this is going to be the only show that I do for the month of July, folks. I'm going to have July off in order to work on the new film, but you can expect to find me back on air talking to you once again around about the 1st of August. So I'm sorry about that, but I really do need to have some time off. I really would like to get some work done on the film, and it's been very difficult to do it. I did a lot of radio shows last month. I did something like 14 shows last month. I didn't even post all of the shows that I did. I just did too many of them to really be able to keep up with them all. And I think I actually have a couple of interviews booked for July anyway, so there will probably be a couple of shows posted to the Crow House, even though I won't be actually doing any of my own for the month of July. That is, of course, providing the Crow House is still up and running by the end of July. We have a few censorship things happening here in Australia. And that is, of course, also providing that we still have a world by the end of July. With what's going on with the global situation, that is a debatable point, as it would appear by their actions that the leaders of our world are currently working very hard to ensure that the demise of the world is brought about very rapidly. For example, it's very interesting to see what's now happening in Libya. There has, of course, recently been an arrest warrant issued for Colonel Gaddafi, and this was announced during a shocking news report that showed that women and children and young girls were taking up arms against the invaders. And does this seem a little strange to you folks? I mean, isn't it funny how the people of Libya are so willing to take up arms to defend their nation and defend Gaddafi? I mean, people must really ask why the people are so willing to defend Gaddafi if he is in fact the terrible dictator that we are informed that he is by our controlled media. Of course, when one young girl was interviewed and asked why she had taken weapons training at school, she told the reporter that she did it to help save her country. And as always, truth comes from the mouths of babes. The entire Libyan uprising is a complete scam, folks. It's about installing the central bank that the so-called rebels installed. The whole war was started because Gaddafi had introduced his own debt-free currency and was demanding that people who trade with the country use his currency. And that's what it was all about. It wasn't anything to do with freeing anybody. It wasn't anything to do with Gaddafi being an evil person. It was done simply so the central banking cartel that controls most of the world by enslaving them to debt could further its tentacles and gain complete control over the Libyan people and the Libyan economy. And of course, the country's very valuable resources. And that is what the so-called Libyan uprising is really all about. All the world is a stage, folks, and the last place you're going to hear any truth is from the mainstream media or from the governments that control the mainstream media. Because that's what the governments do, folks. The media doesn't actually report the news or do investigative journalism anymore. Unfortunately, our modern media is simply the propaganda arm of the government, and it has been that way for quite a long time. If you really do want to know what's going on in the world, folks, you have to investigate it for yourself. And the best way to do that is to simply step back and to look at the world holistically, put the events that you see on a global stage and see how they all play out against each other. Because when you do this, the truth tends to quickly reveal itself. Now, for the last couple of shows, I've been asking my listeners if they've changed. I've been asking many people if they've changed. I've been approaching people that I know and inquiring whether, now that they know the information, now that they know that they need to be the change that they wish to see in the world, then have they actually changed? Have they actually applied it to their lives? And This also needs to be asked of many religious people out there, I'm afraid. Whether you're Christian, whether you're Muslim, both of the fathers of your religion preached peace and tolerance. Christ said that the only way to move to heaven was through him. And this didn't mean praying to him, folks. This means following in his footsteps by being the Christ within yourself. And don't think that this is New Age and you don't have the ability to do so, because you do. This is what Christ tried to tell you, that the path to heaven was by following in the footsteps of Christ. And frankly, some of the hate mail and hateful comments that I've received from Christians lately causes me to really question their faith, because I find that many Christians are very, very quick to defend the teachings of Christ and to promote the teachings of Christ as the way to heaven. But frankly, all throughout my life, I have not yet met a Christian who actually followed in the footsteps of Christ. I haven't met one that truly follows the message and lives by the message that they claim to use as the basic foundation for their faith. And I really don't wish to offend anybody by that statement either, folks. It's just a simple observation of mine. I mean, I've met a lot of good Christians who are good people, but still they don't follow in the teachings of Christ. Still they will turn their back upon certain things. Still they will respect an interest-based money supply. Still they will project hatred towards members of other faiths or members of other races or classes in society. Still they will fail to serve the creation, to follow in the footsteps of the Christ. So it really does make me question where these people are really coming from and what they are actually serving, because it certainly does not seem that they are serving the faith that they claim to be serving. And I think a lot of these people should look a little deeper at themselves and try to understand what energy they are actually in and what state of mind they are actually promoting, whether this is of service to the creation and whether it is a way of applying the teachings of Christ to their reality, or whether it is simply a way of promoting hatred. And essentially, folks, what people need to ask themselves is, what would Christ do in this situation? And they should follow his example. Because if people were to actually do this, then this would be a way of uniting the human family under one umbrella of love, tolerance, and compassion for each other, and thereby healing the world of the problems we currently face. And that's really the truth of the matter, folks. So if you are of a religious persuasion, if you are a Christian, it should be very clear to you that if your church or your government is promoting intolerance towards another under the guise of Christianity, then they are simply not following the teachings of Christ, and they are leading you down a false path which can only ever serve the darker side of creation. I would suggest that you even look to your own Bible and remember that it says that there will be a large number of false prophets that appear near the end times. And I would suggest that if you have starvation or homelessness or people in shortage in your area, and you have a church in your area that has not remedied those problems in your society, and if you have a government or a church that does promote war and intolerance towards others, then you have these false prophets in your midst right now. And I would suggest that you all be very careful who you follow, because who you should follow is the words of Christ, which should reside in your own heart. And when you find your heart, you find your path. When you find your path, you find your way, and the way is through compassion, tolerance, and service to the creation, just as Christ tried to tell you. And folks, this really can also be applied to all religions, because every religious leader, regardless of who they are, regardless of how their words have been twisted by whichever book has been written about them, all of these people promoted peace, tolerance, compassion, and a love and understanding of their fellow man. And we very often fail to see this within any religion. We fail to see it also within the New Age movement. Many New Age people promote love and life, but they still have stuff with each other. They still have issues with each other. They still have ego problems. They still have reflections that they see in each other that they won't face. They still refuse to face the shadow. And this is the problem that we see in religious people as well. This is why we see religious intolerance amongst various religions, is because of the people's failure to face the shadow. The people's failure to face the fear within themselves that causes them to fear other faiths and other religions and other people and other races and other colours and other people from other social classes, and all of the rubbish that we get taught is reality when actually it's not. What's real is the people. And as soon as people realise that all of these systems have been constructed purely to divide them, regardless of the teachings of whichever saviour or teacher they are following, the teachings are probably quite good, but the religious institutions that have been created around them have nothing to do with the actual teachings, and the religious institutions' sole purpose is to divide the people. And it has always been, and to this day still remains, a very effective method of doing so. Do you really want to follow the teachings of your religious leaders? Do you really want to follow the teachings of Christ? Then stop fighting the wars. Start helping your neighbours. Stop judging other people. Stand up against the interest-based money supply. Stop paying interest. Interest is fiction. Stop supporting a fictional system that's enslaving you and raping the planet. Stop supporting corporate interests. Stop allowing corporations to have the same rights as people. Do you want to stop chemtrails in your area? Then stand up. Do something about it. Form an action group in your community. You only need 5 or 10 people. Gather soil samples, gather water samples, or put in a little bit of money, send the samples off to get tested specifically for aluminium, barium and strontium. Get the results back. Go and see your local member, your local politician, show him the results and say, we want answers as to why these chemicals are found in our soil and water. We're not here to petition you. We're not here to suggest that you look into this. We're here to tell you that we want answers as to why these chemicals are being sprayed in our skies. And we are charging you to find out. We will be back in 30 days for an answer. If you fail to have an answer for us, then we will require the names and contact details of every person above you in the political food chain that prevented you from getting this information, because we intend to then approach those individuals to demand that they show cause why they should not be held in breach of trust and taken to The Hague for trial in an international court. And should you fail to follow through on this mandate we are now delivering to you, then when we return in 30 days' time, you will also be required to show cause why you should not be charged with breach of trust in The Hague. Start there, folks, and just see what happens. And then do the same thing for fracking. Tell any politicians who have passed legislation that allows fracking that they are required to show cause why they should not be charged with environmental crimes. And tell them to produce concrete evidence that exploding toxic chemicals underground near water tables does not affect these water tables. Tell them that if they fail to produce this information, you intend to take them to The Hague, where they will be charged with environmental crimes under international law. I mean, do something, folks. I mean, I don't support the legal system in any way. I certainly don't support international law, but you've got to do something. There's got to be some way of taking these people on with their own system. But what prevents us from doing so is that people simply aren't prepared to stand in their power. You've got to understand that these politicians work for us. That's the bottom line, folks. If they're giving corporations the permission to destroy the lifestyle of the people and to destroy the planet, then they're all acting in breach of trust, and it's about time we took the matter in hand. We can't use their system to do it because their system is obviously so corrupt that it would allow this situation to be brought about in the first place. So what's the point of trying to use a corrupt system in order to deal with the corruption within the system? You can't, because it's the system itself that's corrupt.